Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Melissa Wilson, live in the Fox 26 newsroom. It's a working newsroom, so you never know what you're going to hear and see behind me. Hopefully, it's a fairly calm news day. Thanks for being here with me for Lunch for the Soul. This is just a time that we can talk to someone who has remarkable faith. I feel like life lessons can be learned from some people who go through really tough things. And boy, is that going to be our topic today. I just have a remarkable young lady who's been through so much and is brave enough to be able to share her journey. In fact, she's viral on TikTok on a regular basis, so you may already follow her. But without further ado, please welcome Kristen Armstrong. She goes by Chris. Hi, Chris. Thanks for being here.
Hello. How are you today?
Oh, I'm so good. And I'm so happy you're here to talk to us because you have just an unbelievable tale to tell. And I'm going to just hop right in it. I'm going to pop up some pictures so that everybody knows exactly what we're talking about. And we're going to go back in the day to high school when you met the love of your life. You were only 15 years old. Tell us about Brandon.
So, looking at this picture just brings back so many sweet memories for me. I met Brandon. I was 16. He was actually a younger man. He was 15, and we met at church. He was just such a kind heart. He knew everybody. Anywhere we went somewhere, he knew somebody. He was just such a sweet guy, and we fell in love immediately. And within a few years, we knew we wanted to get married. And within 5 years, we did get married. So
I'm going to get much deeper into this and we're going to go back in time too. But this car crash changed everything in your life. It led you to your second husband, who now helps take care of your first husband. It's just an unbelievable tale of sorrow, of love, of dedication, of so much. So let's go back to the beginning. So you realized very quickly that things were bad when the Houston Police Department and your insurance company called you. What happened?
I was driving and they asked me if I was Brandon's wife, and I said yes. They told me to pull over if I was driving, which I did. And, at the time they told me he had been in a serious car accident, but they couldn't tell me if he was alive or not. And they told me to go straight to the hospital, which I did. So I didn't know if I was going to the morgue or where I would be going. Of course, I was terrified and my heart was shattered and scared. Brandon was alive. Thankfully, he was in the neurotrauma ICU.
But it was very, very serious, and it would be for the rest of his life. So with this injury came lifelong deficits. So he's confined to a wheelchair, but he seems to have such a sweet spirit, but he really can't carry on conversations with you. He now calls you little sis some days, I understand. How has that role changed from being wife to caregiver and legal guardian? We'll get more into that in just a moment as well.
So it's, of course, it was a slow process to go from wife to caregiver. It took us a while to realize how severe his injury was. He was in a coma for 2 months. At the time, I knew nothing about brain injury. I only knew what I saw on TV shows, which isn't the best educator. And he slowly came out of the coma and started making progress. But as you said, his injuries, both cognitive and physical, were very severe. And I think when I brought him home for the first time is when I really realized how much care he needed. He needed 24-hour
Mhm,
care.
mhm.
Um, and I turned into more of a caregiver than a spouse at that time. And my love for him has never wavered or changed. It has always been deep. In fact, I think it's deeper now than it ever was. But the role that I play in his life has changed.
Mhm. I know that this all happened when you were in your early 20s. So you met in high school, dated 5 years, got married. You were in college, about to graduate from Texas A&M, only a year left when all of this happened. You're so young. As a young woman, your dream was to become a mom someday, right? And you had to work through those emotions as well. That had to be so tough to go through.
Yeah, it was definitely hard. I knew that I wanted a career and I knew that I wanted to be a mom and I knew I wanted to have a family. And I think I realized that caring for Brandon, I didn't know if I would be able to have that future if we continued the way we did. So it was, of course, it was incredibly hard. There were so many unknowns every day, and I didn't know what our future would hold, and it was incredibly scary. For me, that's where my faith came into play, because I'm so grateful that I have a God that I can lean on when when I say I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. Um, so to me, that played a very pivotal role in all of this.
Well, and I know that a lot of people realize what you're doing now is so amazing to be able to take care of him and give him such a high quality of life. One of our viewers here, Jamie Nicole, saying, Miss Kristen, I think it's amazing that you are caring for him along with your current husband. So let's talk about how that happened and how you were able to it took a lot of legal work and a lot of hard work to switch from being his wife to his legal guardian, and that's all thanks to a local judge in the Houston area, right?
Yeah. So it's obviously not a typical thing to then become a legal guardian of a spouse that you are no longer married to. So I really had to show the probate judge and the courts that I was going to continue to care for him. I had to hire a lawyer who became Brandon's legal guardian for a year while I proved that nothing was going to change. I still visited him. I still advocated for him. I still took him to therapy and his appointments. Um, and then when I went to the judge after a year, I was granted guardianship. And I remember she asked me, what happens when you have a family someday? What happens if you get married? Um, what happens to Brandon? And I told her, nothing is going to change. He's my family. He will always be my family. And I think I told you this before, Melissa, but each year I renew my guardianship paperwork and I turn in a picture of Brandon to show, that he's in good health and he's doing well. And I get to share a picture of our whole family together with Brandon. And I get to reassure that judge that nothing has changed 15 years later. He is very much a part of our family and he's very loved.
It's incredible. I think that has to be an unbelievable feeling for that judge to see that her trust in you all those years ago truly paid off. It's just got to be a remarkable feeling. Let's talk about how hard that was, though. Once it had been years then of taking care of him on your own and you were ready to start dating again. How did that next chapter in your life unfold?
So I will say, this is where the faith piece comes in for me again. I hit my knees so many times, not knowing if this was the right decision because I had made vows. Of course, I had promised that I would be with Brandon through sickness and health. And I remember just, on my knees praying to God, what do I do next? And I felt this peace that God told me that I could still love him and still honor those vows. It was just going to look different. And so, sorry, it's even this many years later, there's still, of course, a lot of emotions around this. So I felt such peace that I could still honor those vows in a different way, that I would still care for him in sickness and I would still love him. It was just going to look different. And then when I started dating, of course it was a unique situation and I didn't date very many people at all. But when I did date, I was very open with the fact that Brandon is a very big part of my life. Almost as if people who, when they date, they have children. Not saying Brandon's my child, of course he's not, but he is kind of a package deal with me, similar to that way.
Mm-hmm.
So when I met my husband online, I told him right away about Brandon, and this is James, my husband, and surprisingly enough, he wasn't scared away. He thought it was a beautiful story, and he wanted to be a part of it. And when I first met James, the very first day I met him, I met his son, who was 5 at the time. That was his package deal. And then he met Brandon the next day. And I think I told you, Melissa, we went to church, and I knew that James was going to be the person for me. I went to the bathroom, I came back, and James's arm was around Brandon. And I just knew that this was going to be my family. And I felt so grateful because I can't tell you how many years as a young woman in my early 20s, I felt so hopeless. I felt so isolated and alone and grief stricken. I never thought that I would get to have the family that I have today. And I'm so grateful for that. And the fact that Brandon is still a part of it is just an unbelievable story of God's goodness.
And I think it's so beautiful to be able to see you through social media, be able to share this relationship and make people realize that life can be unconventional. It can be unexpected, but you can still bring joy. And we see your latest husband feeding Brandon and giving him love and pushing him in the wheelchair. And you're just one big happy family. How did you feel like that acceptance came about? Because it seemed like it was immediate. The fact that the first time they met, he's got his arm around him. It's just like this beautiful, godly man, and acceptance is what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I will say, James is a very unique person. He's a very unique man. Um, he is a beautiful soul, and there's something about him that is so gentle and kind, um, that drew me to him. And for whatever reason, he just loves Brandon as if Brandon were his own brother, were his own family member. And I'm so grateful for that. And nothing has changed. I think it's an easy thing, especially when you're dating somebody, to say, "Oh yeah, I'm okay with that." But to actually live it out day in and day out. And of course, we're like any married couple, we have things that we struggle with. But to be honest, Brandon in our life is not something that has ever been on the table of a discussion that has been a struggle for us, and I'm so grateful for that. We can fight about all kinds of other things, but at the end of the day, where Brandon is in our family and how we love him has been undisputed in our, I think, almost 8 years of marriage.
Well, and as you mentioned, you have the amazing son that he brought into your marriage, and then you have two children of your own with him. And I love that they call Brandon they call him Uncle Brandon, right? And just to protect their privacy, we're not showing their pictures, but we can get just a little glimpse here of they're snuggled up with him, and they love just to hang out with him. What does that relationship look like?
They do. It's so beautiful. I think one of the things that is such a gift in our family is that my children are growing up with a man who has a disability, who looks different than a lot of people in their life. And because of that, I hope and I believe they're going to have more compassionate and kind and inclusive hearts as they get older. But the way they love Brandon is all of them. When I first met my stepson, he was 5, and he'd go to the nursing home with me. He'd give Brandon drinks. He'd hug on all the people that live there. And now my 2 girls, my biological girls, growing up having Brandon as their uncle. And there's no secret there. They know that we were married at one point. It's not like a family secret or anything. They call him Uncle Brandon because he's a part of our family, but they adore him. When we bring him home or go visit him or bring him food, they get so excited to see him. And I think maybe it's because he's an adult in their life that doesn't tell them what to do. I don't know.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
Brandon doesn't talk much, but they just adore him, and they love helping out and jumping in and being there for him.
Oh, it's so wonderful that you just are able to gel like that. I just think it's so powerful. Let's talk about your life and all of this with your career. So you were studying art history when all this happened, but tell me at what point when you realized that your life was going to change in many ways, including what you would do for the rest of your life career-wise.
Yeah, so probably maybe a year or 2 after his accident, after a traumatic brain injury as severe as Brandon's, there was a lot of therapy. So a lot of physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. We had a respiratory therapist, all the therapies. And I saw what a beautiful and amazing and incredible job that they did with him, and what a meaningful work that they did. And I knew that I I knew that I wanted to find something meaningful out of all of this loss and tragedy and sadness and hardness. I wanted to find something beautiful in it, and I feel like God kind of just paved this way to become a speech pathologist. A lot of what we do, people think of speech pathology as working in the schools, which is such an important job. But there's also another side too, the medical side, and the medical side, we help people with their cognition, with their speech, with their swallowing, with executive function, things like that after severe injury and like stroke or traumatic brain injury. We even help people with spinal cord injuries as well when they're on a ventilator. And so I learned about this field, and I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to work with people who've had brain injuries. So I went to U of H and got my master's degree. And 4 years later, I had my degree in my hand, and I got to work with people who've had brain injuries, and I'm a certified brain injury specialist. So now I've been doing this in my career for about 10 years, and it's been such a fulfilling and meaningful career.
And as a medical reporter, I can already picture this because you already knew so much about brain injury from Brandon's experience that you were able to help your patients with that. And then your patients probably help bring insight so that you can help him even more. I mean, it just was a beautiful walk and a thing to do. I just feel like it's so selfless. Everything you do is so amazing. And our viewers agree. I just want you to see this thoughtful message from our viewer, Emily, who says it sounds very touching and admirable. Kristen's experience demonstrates true selflessness and dedication. Caring for a partner who has suffered a devastating accident takes tremendous courage and resilience. as the situation can be extremely stressful and challenging for the entire family. Perfectly stated, Emily. And then take a look at this one. I love this. Miss Osborne, thank you for sharing humility and love. This is First Corinthians. God bless you and your family. Kelly says, this is real talk. And then we have Chris Pierre just saying, have a good afternoon. So just so lovely to be able to see and hear from our viewers who see what you're doing here. But it's not all roses and not everybody's that way. And I got on your TikTok because you have way over more than 100,000 followers there. And you do get some negative talk of people not understanding your situation. I feel like that's why conversations like this, where people can see the whole picture, get a better idea of what you're going through, don't you think?
I think absolutely. I think we're in a place in our world, in our country, where we're so separated, and we think there's only black and white, and there's so much gray. And I think when you get to know somebody, when you hear their story, when you take the time to be curious and to listen, that's when compassion comes out, and empathy and kindness and grace. Because it's so easy to look at somebody else's situation and say what you would do, but none of us know until we're in that situation. And I think, I was saying this earlier, people in my life who have been through really, really hard things have the most amount of grace out of anybody I know, because we know that I can't. It would be really hard for me to look at somebody and say what I would do in that situation, having experienced what I experienced. I never thought that I would be where I am today.
No, nobody would. Nobody ever expects to be high school sweethearts, to get married, to be in college, and to never be able to carry on a conversation with their loved one again. And I always just say, walk a mile in my shoes if you have anything negative to say, because just picture yourself for a moment and what that looks like. And it's a hard walk that you've turned into a beautiful walk. How did you dig into your faith through this? I feel like a lot of times when I talk to people, sometimes they lose their faith and they say, why me? Other people say, I couldn't have done it without God. How did you do it?
So I will say I'm a part of a little ragamuffin church that it brings me tears to think about how well and beautifully they showed up for us. I'm still a part of the same church Brandon and I went to before his accident. And let me just say about the way that those people showed up for us. They came into our home every day. They brought us toilet paper. There was money in our mailbox when we had none. While I worked, people sat with Brandon and cared for him. They showed up at the hospital. I can't even express in what a huge way they showed up and they reminded me every day that God was good. And if I didn't have those people in my life, I may not have been able to hold on to that truth. So just know that the things that we do make such a difference in people's lives. It also made me change my understanding of prayer. I prayed for a miracle for Brandon. I begged God for a miracle. I begged him to wake up from his coma, to be healed, to be 100% himself. And that didn't happen. And to me, that changed my prayer life and helped me to understand that when I am praying for something, it's not, I don't get what I want necessarily. I don't know as much as God knows. And sometimes for me, when I pray for somebody or when I pray for a situation, it's more about God working on my heart so that I know how to love and how to show up for them. But it definitely was a challenging piece in terms of how I prayed for things, because there was no miracle, but at the same time, there was a miracle, Brandon wasn't healed, but the fact that we have this beautiful family is a miracle too. It just looks nothing like I would have imagined.
And that's what I would encourage people, where you said you have your church, wherever you can get a support group, wherever you can get love, wherever you can get people to love on you and to be there for you, it makes a true difference. And I'll just wrap it with just a couple more comments. We have Rosalind who says, thank you for sharing your light with the world, Chris. We have Kay who says, this is God's love. May God bless you and your family. And we have Rosalind again saying, God is so faithful, and continued blessings. Kristen, thank you for sharing your story. It's remarkable. It's beautiful, and you are a strong woman, and I feel like we've all learned from you. So thank you for sharing your vulnerable side, and just, I agree, for being a light in this world.
Thank you for having me on. It was great chatting, Melissa.
Appreciate you and wish you nothing but the best moving forward, and only light and love to you, as you so well deserve. All
Thank
right,
you.
take care of yourself. And I just want to remind you all, please join me every Wednesday right here for Lunch for the Soul. Hey, if you have a Lunch for the Soul idea, if you want to be featured here, I'd love for you to reach out to me. It's easy to do. Just go to our website. You can go to fox26houston.com, or right here, you can go to Fox 26's YouTube page to watch any of my Lunch for the Souls. And I want to tell you quickly, if you want to follow Kristen and see some videos of her family, she's so open and honest. You can follow her right there. Follow me to the mouse. That's how you find her on TikTok. Until next week, I hope you all have a beautiful week and have a blessed day. I'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.